Hey guys, today I wanted to do a book review, full book review on The Water Dancer. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name because I'll probably do it wrong and I don't want to do that. So this is by Mr. Coates here, and I've never read anything by him. I was really excited to get started on this book because I've heard so many good things about it. I think how I'm going to start doing these videos is like the first half I talk about non-spoiler stuff, and then I'll kind of say a warning and then talk about some more spoiler things. I don't have that many spoilers to talk about in this book, but I thought I would just mention that. I did finish it yesterday morning and I was gonna review it yesterday, and then I was like, you know what, I want some time to think about it and get my thoughts together, so we're here. I was so excited to get my hands on this book. I read so many good things about it. The number one thing people were saying that I agree with is to definitely take your time and soak it in, because it's a lot to take in. I'm not gonna lie to you. This is one of the books with like the most mature writing, in that the sentence structure, the vocabulary he chose, just how he put words together and ideas together, it was so like adult to me. I don't know, I've never really read writing like this and I really enjoyed it. Like every page I had to whip out my phone and look up a word that I didn't know, because it was just such good vocabulary. So that kind of makes you have to stop a lot, and so you can't really zoom through it. Usually this would take me about 2 or 3 days to read, and it took me I think 5 days, so still not that long. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the plot. Again, these are no spoilers. If you just read the inside cover, I'm going to basically talk about that. So this follows the story of a slave, of slavery in the United States in the South. And I looked back on my bookshelf, just trying to go through my brain and think about if I've read a novel about slavery. And I don't think I have, which is shocking because I love history. I love reading about really important historical events. And I just can't believe that I've never read a book about slavery yet, like before. I've read so much about the Holocaust. Of course, like Holocaust books and things like that are very difficult to read. It's really horrendous stuff. But there's something about like slavery in the South that just really hits home. Like this takes place like in my backyard, you know. My whole life I've lived in the South. I live in South Carolina now. I live in Texas, Louisiana, Maryland, Virginia. And this book mainly takes place in Virginia and talks about slavery there. And so for me, it's just a lot harder to read, just knowing that like this happened here. And, you know, the Holocaust happened in like Germany and Poland and Austria. And for some reason, my brain is like, that's so far away. Like it's hard to imagine, even though it was even more recent. But just the fact, like reading these states and these towns and just knowing that is where I am is really hard. And there are very hard things to read in this book, but I of course think it's really important and that all of us need to be aware of what's happened in our past, especially in the United States if you live here. So this is about slavery, like I said, mainly in Virginia, and it follows the story of one slave named Hiram, I think is how you pronounce his name. He goes by Hi, so I'm going to refer to him as Hi in this review, H-I. So he lives on this family estate, this, you know, white family that owns all these slaves. I don't know if they refer to whatever as like a plantation, but kind of like a plantation in Virginia, and they mainly farm tobacco. So he lives here. So his mother was taken away, I think brought further south when he was about 7 years old. And then his father was actually, he is the kind of slave owner, the head of this plantation, the white plantation owner. And so I think it was pretty common, as far as I understand, that a lot of slave owners did have babies with slaves. So he was the result of that. And so he's at this weird in-between where he is a slave, but his father is the slave owner. And then he has, I believe it's a younger brother named Maynard, who is fully white. His mother passed. And so he's just at this weird place where he's like a slave to his brother, but Hi is very, very smart. He's so much smarter than his brother. and is much more capable than his brother, but of course he's a slave, so he doesn't really have any authority at all, and just kind of finds himself really, really confused and lost. So like I said, Hai is very, very smart, and the main thing about him is that he has a great memory, and that's just kind of a common theme throughout this book. And he can remember every little detail about every person he's ever met in his life, but he cannot remember anything about his mother. And so again, that's kind of a common thread throughout this entire story. He's trying to find ways to remember his mother because of course that's very important to him. So it just kind of follows his story. It's no spoiler alert, but he does find himself leaving this plantation. I'm not going to go into detail about like how or the circumstances or anything, and he finds himself up north with the Underground Railroad and finds that he does have to come back home for family, and it's just kind of following his story. Of course, there's so much that happens along the way, a lot of hard things to read. It's definitely like an adult book. That's kind of the main plot line. Something that's really big in this book is this special power that Hai has, kind of this magical power, which is told in the cover of the book. So again, not a spoiler, but I don't know, to me it just kind of, it changed the whole feeling of the book. So he finds himself kind of like drowning in this river in like the opening scene of the book, and he uses this power to get out of it. And so he's trying to kind of contain and control this power throughout the book. And I just found that adding that little bit of magic that at the end has a huge role and is talked about a lot, I just think it kind of dampened the story for me, and I thought made it less serious and like less believable, even though I know things like this happened. I feel like adding that bit of magic wasn't, I'm just so into like real stories and real biographies and stuff that adding magic, it just didn't do it for me. It just kind of took away from the struggle of slavery that was talked about. I feel like it would have been stronger if that was kind of not completely left out, but kind of lessened. But it did take a bigger role towards the end of the story. But overall, incredible story. I would highly recommend it. It is difficult to read. You definitely want to take your time with it, but it's like an introduction into slavery novels. It was a great tie-in. It definitely makes me want to look into this genre further and really like fully dive into that, because I can't believe I haven't before. I don't know how I haven't realized that, but I would highly recommend it if you're interested. It's an important part of our history that I think, and he just does a great job of just fully immersing you into this story and fully making you feel like you're there with him and feeling all of these emotions and his frustrations. Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about spoilers now, not much, but if you've not read this book, then stop watching. So I don't even know where to start with spoilers. I loved that he brought in Harriet Tubman, which he referred to as Moses a lot in the beginning, and I was like, I think that's Harriet Tubman, but I'm not sure. I had to look it up. Of course, I've like heard of her, but I don't know much about her story, and so that was like a cool introduction. I then looked her up, and like she was involved in the underground up in Philadelphia, which I thought was cool that he incorporated that as well. Loved how at the end, like the necklace is what brought back the memories of his mom. But again, I did not like that magic part of him teleporting, you know, Thena with Harriet Tubman back to Philadelphia, and then he came back to Virginia. It was just a lot to me and kind of muddied the plot line for me. We could have done without that and kind of done a more realistic view. But I know that that wasn't his purpose of this book, and he wasn't going for that. Loved Hai's storyline, and I loved him and Thena's relationship, and him and his father's relationship, and him and Maynard, and all of these parental figures that he had throughout his journey. I loved those relationships that he formed. I wasn't a huge fan of Sophia and the fact that he like went back for her, but you know, there's got to be a love interest in there somewhere. So I wish that he would have stayed in Philadelphia. I think he got a really cool group of people around him, and I feel like that's kind of where he belonged. It kind of made me upset that he went back to Virginia, but I know that he had to go back for his family. But the whole description of how Virginia became so desolate, like the tobacco farms were falling apart and everyone was leaving, it gives you such a feeling of like loss as a reader. I hate that feeling, and he portrayed it so well and made you feel how empty this house was now once he came back. Like I said, absolutely recommend. It was a great book. The writing style is so incredible. I can't praise it enough. So that is my full review of this book. Let me know what you guys think below. Let me know what you guys thought of the whole magical power incorporation into the story. If you think it made it better or worse, I'd be really interested to know what you guys think. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.